The name is Bond.
007 Agent Under Fire is easily one of the most important 007 games I think of all time, and not just because of how good it is, which it is good, but also because of how one major decision made regarding its development totally restabilized the methodology for what a Bond game could and should look like. And that decision was to make it a totally original experience with no relation to a prior released film. It wasn't the first 007 game to be made with an original narrative, but it was the first to set a precedent for it. When Agent Under Fire entered development, it had initially only been greenlit by EA as a fourth adaptation of The World Is Not Enough, a title which had EA firing on all cylinders to try and make sure it was available on multiple major consoles. If you haven't seen my videos on The World Is Not Enough or its predecessor game Tomorrow Never Dies, then I'd recommend checking those out as I go more in depth on those games and their development cycles. As mentioned in my coverage of the different video game adaptations for The World Is Not Enough, EA had also planned to make a version of the game for the PC and the, at the time, upcoming PlayStation 2. This was that game. The plan was to feature 10 different levels, each one twice the size of anything players would find on the previous console generation iterations of the game, and a heavy combination of action and stealth gameplay to allow for an adaptable player experience. Not to mention 20 gadgets, vehicle sections like boating, skiing, and casino minigames, along with a fully fleshed out multiplayer mode the likes of which had never been seen in a Bond game before. Then there's my favorite part. Each mission was to feature a multitude of different ways to complete it to encourage multiple playthroughs and environmental exploration. Secret passages, alternate routes, and more, all jam-packed into one unparalleled 007 video game experience. Well, most of that clearly didn't happen. Development of The World Is Not Enough on the PS2 was sort of being handled by multiple different studios until finally landing on a studio known at the time as EA Redwood Shores, a developer you might recognize from such major titles as Dante's Inferno and, oh, I don't know, the Dead Space series. If you don't recognize them for that, it's because they changed their studio name from EA Redwood Shores to Visceral Games shortly after the release of the first Dead Space game. It's a whole thing, but the takeaway here should be that you know this game is quality. When the game was announced as another adaptation of The World Is Not Enough, it was also revealed that it would be developed on the Quake 3 engine, now known retroactively as id Tech 3, which was exciting because, of course, at the time, there was no other shooter on the market that could hold a candle to the fast-paced and smooth gameplay of id Software shooters. The game was delayed not long after this, however, being pushed back from its initially intended release of late 2000, alongside its N64 and PS1 console counterparts, to late 2001. Then, somewhere during this window, both EA Games and the studio developing the game had reached the decision to overhaul everything and completely abandon all ties to The World Is Not Enough by retrofitting this ambitious new title into something wholly unique and original. Then came the reveal of James Bond 007 in Agent Under Fire.
I'll take it from here.
A brand new Bond adventure with new, never-before-seen characters and a fresh, globe-trotting story promising to deliver a deep-cut 007 experience unlike any other. An executive producer from EA named John Horsley clarified the matter saying, quote, "We thought we could deliver a good The World Is Not Enough game for the PS2, but we also thought we could combine forces with some of our other studios and deliver a great original Bond experience with Agent Under Fire. The extra time has provided us the opportunity to create an entirely new game not tied to a specific movie and address some points that we knew we couldn't get into The World Is Not Enough under that timeline." End quote. And so what was intended to just be another iteration of EA's second attempt at a 007 adaptation instead went on to become the third entry in what we now refer to as EA's Bond 6. And by the way, just to clarify this for whoever needs to hear it, EA's Bond 6 isn't referencing 6 individual games. It's 6 conceptual titles greenlit by EA Games over a certain period of time, like the Capcom 5. So all 3 versions of The World Is Not Enough count as 1, along with both the GBA PC and console versions of Nightfire counting as 1. Of course, it wouldn't be a proper Bond story without a few familiar faces. Sort of. While characters inspired by the films do show up, the studio couldn't pull off the full Hollywood lineup this time around. John Cleese did appear in an advertisement to promote the game as R, yet ironically, his in-game counterpart arrives without his actual likeness or voice.
Where exactly is the rest of this?
So when I mentioned in my coverage of 007 Racing that Cleese's role as R in that game would be his last in-game appearance as the character, that's what I meant because he doesn't play R in this game and is credited as Q in later appearances, which I do think gives this game an even more unique atmosphere as a Bond outing, so there's that.
And I suppose you can explain this.
Instead, EA brought in an ensemble of voice doubles to keep things sounding MI6 official while avoiding legal laser tripwires. So for the first time since GoldenEye, our in-game Bond isn't modeled after Pierce Brosnan, although he is clearly modeled to look as much like him as they could get away with. Interestingly enough, from what I was reading while doing some research for the game, the team had wanted to bring in Roger Moore to portray the character one last time, or at least feature his likeness, but for whatever reason, this didn't pan out. Instead, he's been modeled after and voiced by British actor Andrew Bicknell, who does a fine job in his portrayal of Bond. Although you know who else this Bond kind of looks and acts like? Henry Cavill.
I don't think this scotch is helping either.
Look, I know it's a stretch, but the truth is that there's few actors in history who deserve a role more than Cavill deserves Bond. And based on what we've been hearing from Amazon about their upcoming 007 franchise reboot, this is seemingly as close as we'll probably ever get. As you can clearly see, this game wasn't slacking visually either. EA enlisted CGI monoliths, Industrial Light and Magic, and Pacific Data images to give Bond cinematic moments a proper action movie sheen. You weren't just racing cars, you were flipping into full-on spy drama between missions, complete with glossy cutscenes and high-stakes action set pieces. This is why some of us older gamers aren't impressed anymore when the difference between newer console generations just equates to more individual hairs on a character's arm moving when the wind blows in real time. Because from 1999 to 2001, we went from this to this. Development of the PlayStation 2 version of Agent Under Fire wrapped just before Halloween 2001 and hit US shelves a couple of weeks later on November 13th in North America and November 30th in PAL regions. Soon after that, EA revealed that the GameCube and Xbox would also be getting in on the espionage action, with these ports even featuring bot support in their multiplayer mode, which was huge back then. The Xbox and GameCube saw their ports of Agent Under Fire released on March 12th, 2002 in North America and June 14th in PAL regions. And it was awesome. Dozens of different weapons to play with, car chase sequences to rival the best of them, and an incredible soundtrack to score the espionage action across all 12 of its excellent levels. And also, all of it looks spectacular. Now, of course I'm playing this on a PS2 emulator, so it's been optimized and upscaled to look as good as I could make it, but even still, it's not like it's a different game or anything. This is just what Agent Under Fire could look like with its limitations removed, and I love it. Of course, I'm really biased to this kind of retro game PS2 era aesthetic of level design, but looking around these levels was such a treat for me. I can't get enough of how cool this all looks, and I'm not just talking art style. Look at how interesting everything in sight is at all times. Skyboxes, backdrops, the sheer detail work of it all. Every level feels fleshed out and lived in, not just to be a linear path for the player to overcome and walk through, but a full world for them to discover. It's fantastic. So, since the game features a wholly original story to tell, of course we're going to look at it level by level like always, break down Agent Under Fire's narrative, talk about its plot, characters, and even take a look at some of the leftover assets from when it was still supposed to be a movie adaptation. But first, you already know we gotta take a moment to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Manta Sleep. Sleep is becoming increasingly harder to secure in today's day and age, and the fact is that not only are our opportunities to secure sleep decreasing, but the quality of our sleep is plummeting right alongside it, which is where the pro-nap movement makers over at Manta Sleep come in. A longtime sponsor of this channel at this point, and for very good reason. That being because I actually genuinely use their product, believe in it, and it literally does work for me. When you're having trouble sleeping due to light or visual distractions is exactly when these high-quality sleep masks can give you back control of your sleep. When you're laying down to go to sleep or just trying to take a nap, the busy movement of the world around you can still be picked up even when your eyes are closed, and so it helps so much to have a sleep mask to more firmly shut out those distractions and secure a deeper sleep. And there's such an enormous selection of different sleep masks over at mantasleep.com that one or two of them are bound to fit your needs. I'm talking everything from weighted sleep masks to cooling sleep masks, steam sleep masks, and even a kid's sleep mask made specifically for ages 6 and up for your children. If you, a member of your family, or even a friend struggle with getting into a deeper sleep, then a Manta Sleep sleep masks could be the perfect gift either for you or for someone you love. So just make sure you punch in my code EvanPrince at checkout to lock in that 10% off discount on your next order and commit to a deeper sleep today.
One thing troubles me. How can I be sure you're the genuine article?
Our story begins after the CIA reaches out to MI6 for aid in rescuing one of their agents, a Miss Zoe Nightshade, who sent out a distress signal from Hong Kong, where 007 already happens to be at the moment. What we know is that Nightshade went missing while investigating a botanical research firm called Identicon, run by a man named Nigel Block, who most assuredly looks like a CEO and not a Bond villain at all. So his character model is actually just a remodeled version of Renard from the game's previous version pre-Overhaul, and there's a ton of those leftover assets that have been reworked for this game that I'll kind of touch on here and there as we get to them.
The CIA believes that Identicon is a front for a massive smuggling ring dealing in biological weapons.
Nightshade had infiltrated the Identicon facility in order to obtain a case of whatever was in the vials contained in these cases being shipped around and get it back to the CIA before she herself was compromised in her mission, which is where we come in. As Bond, our job is to infiltrate the botanical research facility, obtain the samples, find Nightshade, and if still alive, extract her from the premise. The game opens by introducing the player to the concept of multiple routes toward completing a level by informing us that we can access the facility by decoding the digital lock or grappling up to the top of the building and looking for a roof access hatch. Before making a decision, however, I wanted to take a minute to familiarize myself with controls and just admire how exquisite this game looks. This game came out in 2001, by the way, and it looks so good. Oh yeah, and that character carrying the briefcase we're here to snatch is clearly a leftover model for LeChase's character from The World Is Not Enough. If you choose to use your Q decryptor to open the door, then you'll be spotted by a camera showing you that certain routes taken come with more consequences than others.
We've been compromised. An intruder has entered from the helipad.
Show him our usual hospitality.
Alternatively, if you enter from the roof, you're able to maintain a marginally lower profile and stay stealthy for longer. Several missions try and accommodate for potential stealth gameplay, but I'm just going to level with you now and tell you that as someone who loves stealth games, the stealth gameplay in this game is not very good. You have to actually go so far out of your way to engage with it for extended periods of time, and the game has clearly been designed with the player being stealthy in small amounts before getting spotted in mind. I'll talk more about this later, but look at how awesome this opening mission looks. Stellar opening mission. Such a great setup for a Bond game. Another thing this game introduces is something called Bond moves. Every level is saturated in small activatable scripted sequences of environmental interactivity hidden for the player to find if they're paying attention. And if the player is able to find one of them, they're rewarded with a fun event occurring and a little badge that pops up on the screen along with a bit of the Bond theme playing. Two examples of this are the first one pointed out to the player to shoot an explosive barrel causing the forklift to explode and killing all of these guards, and another is shooting this crate to fall on this guy. The point of these moments is to allow the player to replicate the feeling of pulling off the kinds of cool moves we would see Bond perform in the films, but the thing that makes them special is that they're pretty much all completely optional, and some are even obfuscated to a degree.
It went this way!
The fact that the potential for players to miss out on these moments not only inspired this feeling of having achieved something when you find them, but also encourages multiple playthroughs to try and see if you can find any that you missed the first time around. I'll point out some of my favorite ones as we go. Something else I need to note about this game is that the level of attention that has gone into the firefight arenas is incredible. I'm not saying this game is anywhere on the same level of the first Fear game, I mean, how many games are, but I am saying that I was getting flashbacks to how firefights felt in Fear with how visceral some of the firefights in this game can be. Here, let me just play some footage.
Get back there!
Notice how the glass shatters around you and the bullets cause particle effects to explode out of the wall when they impact? Not to make a joke, but the combat is actually just straight up, well, visceral. At the end of this level, we find Zoe Nightshade strapped to a submarine that's about to descend underwater, and of course, we need to get down there and rescue her. Now, if you remember in my coverage of The World Is Not Enough, I showed a mission with a submarine bay not too dissimilar to this one, and that's because this is another reworked asset from the old version of this game. Pretty interesting reuse of it too, and it flows so seamlessly that I wouldn't have even thought of it if I hadn't seen it pointed out when doing research for the game. After fighting our way through the bay and taking out a bunch of hostile guards, Bond is able to make contact with and rescue the CIA asset, Ms. Nightshade.
I don't know how to thank you.
I'm sure we'll think of something.
At the end of every mission, we get a mission results screen showing us the metrics of our performance. These include things like how many Bond moves you found, how many enemies you killed, etc. If you manage to stack enough points across your playtime, you'll be awarded a medal, and certain medals come with certain rewards, such as the Golden Gun in this case, which isn't a one-shot kill replica from the man with the Golden Gun, but instead just a gold-plated version of Bond's default Wolfram P2K with slightly more damage and a suppressor attachment. This is why you'll see me rocking a gold pistol in most of this footage. Moving on to Mission 2, while trying to make their getaway from the facility, our heroes are ambushed on the road and things just keep getting better.
Looks like we have company, Zoe. Keep a firm grip on the wheel. I'll hold them off.
This is the first of 3 on-the-rails levels across the game, and it goes insanely hard. For anyone that actually enjoys a good on-the-rails experience like this, you are in for a treat, because it's one of the coolest and most stylish rail shooter sections I think I've ever seen. You're both armed and dangerous while propped out of the sunroof of a car driven by Agent Nightshade, while we blow our way through a variety of high-octane set pieces scattered across the streets of Hong Kong, and the interiors of a few buildings will be busting our way through. It's not a very long mission, but when your level is this explosive and fun, I'd say it's fine.
Head to the dock, Zoe. We'll get my car.
After relinking with R, who has had our BMW delivered to these docks, he walks us through all of its various gizmos and gadgets. It's so clear that they had actually wanted this character to be portrayed by John Cleese until negotiations fell through, because Q doesn't even make an appearance in this game despite every gadget being called a Q item, like the Q laser and so on. There was actually an in-game model that resembled Cleese far closer leaked from an earlier build of the game, but it was changed after they couldn't secure him for the role.
Do take care of this machine, 007. You seem to have no appreciation for the painstaking effort that goes into building this type of equipment. She's dead, 007.
Bond, it's too late for her, but the assassin has taken the vials. Get after them.
Oh, and now we've got the first of 2 different driving-based, car-centric missions in this game, and what can I say except that it's incredible. Part of this might just be a side effect of having so recently played the best of what the PS1 had to offer for a 007 driving experience, and it ranging from mediocre to bad. But I'm pretty sure this level actually just objectively rules. With that limo having just murdered Agent Nightshade and stolen the vials we worked so hard to secure, it's up to us to drive through the streets of Hong Kong once again in pursuit of those vials that we had secured in a Q-branch briefcase with a tracker to help us find it. And I can't believe it, the driving feels good. I mean, it feels great even. I was having such a good time playing this. I mean, honestly, who would have guessed that a game on the id Tech 3 engine would have such brilliant driving mechanics? And it's not even all just a linear path either. There's like 3 city blocks, all of which we can technically drive through while chasing this van where they've transferred the vials we need. Scattered around the map are a variety of different items and weapon mods we can collect while driving to employ, such as missiles, rockets, smoke bombs, oil slicks, and even a Q-boost, which acts as a nitrous mod. Oh, and of course the Q-pulse, which acts as an EMP to disable whatever vehicle it hits, and this is what we'll be needing in order to stop that van and get those samples back. Everything about this is so cool, and the music is going absolutely crazy. I'll of course have a section talking more about the music later on, but I mean, just listen to this for a second. As it happens, these driving sections were actually handled by a bunch of veteran developers of the older Need for Speed games by EA Canada, who were brought in to help EA Redwood Shores out with the game's development. In fact, in order to help me out with conveying exactly how good all of this is, I called on my friend No More Mercy, who's something of an expert on driving games and has been doing in-depth deep dives on the Need for Speed series over on his channel recently.
Evan is right about Dangerous Pursuit. It's a badass mission where you take the wheel of James Bond's BMW Z8. A car that was previously featured in The World Is Not Enough. The driving physics suit this game well. Like, I'd hate to see these in a racing game. I felt the car was too twitchy while turning, but since this is an action game with shooting and all kinds of chaos, it works. The car was planted on the ground and made targeting enemies with the various weapons a breeze. As someone who is not an expert on James Bond games, I found this mission to be very intuitive and easy to jump into as a driving game fan. I thought the quote-unquote open world was pretty unexpected. It's not an open world in the sense that you can go wherever you want and do whatever you want. I mean, you can, but you're not progressing the mission that way. But what I mean is that there are various ways to get to your destination. I liked that a lot about Dangerous Pursuit, just being able to choose my route to the objective. I fully expected this to be an on-rails segment, but it wasn't. I even replayed the mission after beating it the first time just to take a different route and see what kind of mischief I could get myself into. On my first playthrough, I just beelined it to the objective and took down the target. Boring. On my second playthrough though, I drove around and just tried to cause as much chaos as possible. It's no GTA, that's for sure, but not being penalized for blowing up civilian cars had me cackling. I also found an entrance to a subway where, of course, I flew down it and broke as many props as possible, blasting through benches and making the NPCs scatter all around. But eventually, I got to my destination and took down the target a second time. If I had one complaint regarding this mission, it would be that it ends just as it gets going. Either way, it's a fun mission and one you won't forget.
With the samples brought back to MI6, an analysis shows us that there were 9 vials of human blood and various photos of a British embassy in Romania. 8 of the vials were labeled with the initials of some of the world's most powerful nations, with the final one simply being marked Griffin. Based on the photos of the British embassy, it's deduced that this is referring to a British diplomat named Reginald Griffin, currently stationed in the aforementioned embassy. Turns out, Griffin has been subject to several reports of unorthodox behavior as of late, and things are adding up to point straight at him being involved in all of this. So our job is to infiltrate that embassy, access his computer, and find out anything we can about what Griffin has been doing in there, how he's connected, and why his behavior has been reported as erratic. This being such a volatile location and operation, stealth isn't optional here. Getting spotted risks a guard setting off the alarm, and if that happens, it's game over. And so R has equipped us with a tranquilizer gun that will knock out our opposition in a single shot, although I ended up finding it far more fun to sneak up behind them and... Now this is one of the shorter missions, but it can feel so much longer as you replay it over and over again, trying not to get spotted and learning the layout of the building as you go. Like how I tripped on this box of wine bottles that prompted a guard to come investigate.
Did you hear that?
And you know what? They could have gotten away with not adding stuff like this. The level of detail attentiveness is 100% a demonstration of love from the developers. The map itself is made up of just 3 floors, all 3 of which are relatively small, all things considered, so you'll actually get through them pretty quick. We do get some absolutely incredible 007 themed elevator music though. It's also worth mentioning that this level is relatively plot heavy as well, with it being where Bond comes face to face with a fairly important character in this game's narrative.
These are private quarters.
Sorry, miss. I'm with the new security team sent by the Home Office. I seem to have taken a wrong turn.
Really? Shall I show you the way?
With the keycard we need in hand, we use it to access Griffin's office and try to get to the bottom of all of this.
M, I found Griffin. He's been tortured to death. Looks like an interrogation gone bad.
No, sir.
Well, it looks like Bond is seeing double.
Your eyes don't deceive you. Unfortunately, I am the last thing they will ever see.
On the body's person was a password decoder that we'll be using to access Griffin's computer to finally see what we can dig up, which is where Bond finds an audio log talking about delivering some kind of defective merchandise to a company called Malprave Industries in Switzerland. I'd say that's enough to work on and call a lead, so with that handled, we make our way back downstairs and head out the front door like we were never there. Well, except for the dead body double we left behind, in addition to having been spotted by a woman while in the building, but other than that, once out of the embassy, M informs Bond that blood tests revealed the body double he'd killed to be an exact genetic duplicate of Griffin himself, which can only mean one thing. We killed a clone.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
No, seriously, that's kind of like the main thing in this game. I mean, I don't hate it. It's obviously very silly, and I don't think it's insanely out of the realm of Bondian plotlines, and for a game that deals with cloning as a major plot point, I think this one does a half-decent job, all things considered. So with that in mind, Bond takes a trip to Switzerland to infiltrate Malprave Industries and try to collect any evidence of their involvement with this whole cloning thing, along with any potential giveaways as to what their plans are regarding it.
I'm afraid your interview with Ms. Malprave has been delayed. In the meantime, you can enjoy the view.
I already am. I previously met Adrian Malprave. She was in the embassy in Romania.
Then you'd better collect your information and get out, 007.
So that woman we met in Romania was the CEO of Malprave Industries, Adrian Malprave. Anyway, this level is another one with the potential to be stealthy if you try, or go guns blazing if you prefer. And given how the level is laid out, I'm just telling you to expect it will almost always fall into the latter. I think this is one of the longer missions in the game too, but that might also just be because I kept retrying over and over again to be stealthy and failing. Having played so much Metal Gear and Splinter Cell, you'd think sneaking around in these vents and taking people down would be no trouble at all, but it's actually quite difficult. The guards spot you incredibly easily, and their placement is in such a specific manner that it's hard to ever move without one of them spotting you. So in that sense, I guess it's realistic. In this upper area of the headquarters, we'll be sneaking around and using our Q camera, yes, that's what it's really called, to take photos of some blueprints and a few other pieces of evidence and items to be sent back to Q Branch in MI6. The entire time you're doing this, you're also on a countdown timer, which adds to an additional layer of pressure, although I will say that the timer is more than generous and I never came close to running out of time. Once this is done, we take the elevators down to the lower level in search of the mainframe to digitally download whatever data we can from it. We do this using our Q decryptor, and despite the fact that all this entails is equipping a little item and pointing it at a texture that says data port and clicking, it still feels oddly involved and satisfying to pull off in a way I can't fully describe. They really don't make games like this anymore. We then take an elevator down into a bunker area where we need to find a way out of here. There's some assets down here too that were intended for use in the nuclear bunker area of the Masquerade level when the game was still an adaptation of The World Is Not Enough. And even the name of this level, Cold Reception, is a carryover from that, as it's shared with the other iterations of that game, all of which also featured a level called Cold Reception, and references a line from the film.
I came prepared for a cold reception.
Once down here, I ended up spending an insane amount of time crawling around in all these different vents trying to successfully get through this area without being noticed, and it is so much harder than it sounds. You really do have to be in your secret agent mindset here, taking things slow, mapping out the location in your mind as you go, and utilizing the environment like shooting the valves to knock guards out. You're going to want to have gotten the golden accuracy perk by getting gold medals up to this point so that you can just go for headshots wherever you can, because this makes things much easier to just kill everyone as fast as possible before anyone can reach an alarm. Still a valid stealth strategy. I mean, was I ever really spotted if no one lived to say? I did eventually get tired of it and just start blowing things up and going loud, but it was near the end of the mission and I extracted in classic 007 fashion, if I do say so myself.
Bond, Malprave is going to attempt a direct assault on the embassy. Their target is Dr. Natalia Damescu, who used to work for Malprave. She has a data chip indicating the location of something known as Poseidon. Make sure that Dr. Damescu is not captured.
The first thing I want to talk about here is how insanely cool all of this looks. The style of this game's graphics and design is so charming, and I kind of just wanted to wander around these streets and see what I could find. There isn't much to find, but still, I'd play a small open world Bond game in this kind of setting. So we're headed back to Romania again to ensure the safety of a scientist formerly employed by Malprave named Dr. Natalia Damescu, who recently stole a data chip regarding something only known to us as Poseidon. Damescu is now holed up in the British Embassy in Romania for her safety, and MI6 believes Malprave and her mercenaries will be attempting to find the defecting doctor and retrieve her stolen data chip. Supposedly, she's hired a top-notch bounty hunter named Carla the Jackal to find and abduct Damescu, which means we'll need to beat her to it, find the good doctor, and extract her before the Jackal or Malprave's other mercs can find her. I got curious and went on Google to try to see how similar this in-game British embassy is to the real-life one in Bucharest, but I really couldn't find that many good images to compare it with, so I'm not sure. It's definitely not one-to-one, but it does look close, I think. If you explore a small bit, you will find guns and armor hidden behind these shop windows, which is hardly realistic, but it's a fun thing to find. This is such a great sequence too, with us having a firefight outside of the British Embassy in Bucharest. I mean, it really does feel so Bond. Grappling up to the side of this building, we make our way across a balcony into a safe house R has set up for us. Keen-eared listeners will recognize this as a reused track for the PS1 version of The World Is Not Enough.
Ah yes, the latest in holographic technology. I thought that would catch your eye, 007. Now pay attention. This ordinary-looking business card contains circuitry that will turn your watch into a skeleton key for digital locks. Its beam will disrupt any digital encryption. Quite clever, I dare say.
This game is so ridiculous. I love it. We use our grapple hook to cross this gap and take us into the embassy where we can begin trying to rescue some hostages and find our Dr. Damescu. Last time we were here, we had to play it quiet. This time, it's guns blazing. We also get a little puzzle to solve here where we have to find a hidden passage in this main room, only knowing the phrase King and Country, which I immediately figured out meant to interact with the old Union Jack here, but you can find this by using your Q-specs if you think to do it. This is Dr. Damescu, but the chip has already been stolen and it's on its way out of the city, which means it's time for us to give chase. The main thing to worry about in here, however, is Carla the Jackal. This game features 3 boss battles, and Carla is one of them.
Well, well, the famous James Bond.
This is another area where the game will let you miss out on a cool moment if you're not thinking like Bond. She's got a ton of health, but you can actually kill her by just mag dumping her with every weapon you've got until she dies. Or, if you're paying attention, you can hit this button and do it the right way.
Bond, did you encounter the Jackal? What happened?
She's fallen for me.
He doesn't make his quip if you don't kill her by using the machine, by the way, which is such a good touch. Anyway, then we destroy a helicopter with these machine guns. Interestingly, you can take these choppers down by shooting the pilot, which I didn't realize until later, but this is also, again, such a cool detail. The data chip we need was ejected from a damaged helicopter, which means it's somewhere in the streets of Bucharest, which, fittingly, is the name of this level. It's the second of the game's 2 driving missions, and is somehow even better than the first. It's faster paced, more intense, and overall just so good. A second act car chase through a series of city streets is the exact type of thing that makes this game so great. The first thing we need to do is find the railroad tracks and pick up a Q locator chip that R has dropped off for us. And with that in hand, we use it to track the data chip with the information we need on Poseidon. According to Dr. Natalia, Poseidon is the name of the facility where Malprave has been pursuing their clone research, so it's imperative that we get that chip. I really can't praise this game enough either. It's just so cool.
You'll have to rendezvous with our 007. Our satellite indicates that Malprave's men are swarming out there. Exercise extreme caution.
I found just the thing.
Okay, so this one might take things a little too far, but I get that they were going for the GoldenEye callback, and in a Bond game about cloning world leaders, driving a Soviet tank through Bucharest really isn't that out of place, I guess. This is the second of the game's 3 on-the-rails missions, actually, since we don't get to control the tank's movement or direction, but we do get to control its main cannon and minigun, and we can swap back and forth between them at will, which is cool. We also get this night vision goggles bit to help us pinpoint a bunch of enemies in the street, but the battery pack expires after like 30 seconds, so I'm not entirely sure what the point of this was. It's entirely spectacle, and the amount of damage Bond does to the streets of Bucharest in this one level alone likely cost the crown hundreds of millions of dollars. Oh, I'm sorry, pounds.
Good job, 007. R is waiting for you.
Smashing entrance, wouldn't you say?
No, I wouldn't, 007.
I've recovered the chip. With a bit of your handiwork, it should tell us the location of Malprave's secret lab.
We'll leave that job in Zed's capable hands.
Very capable indeed.
The information from the data chip provided some coordinates to this oil rig out in the South China Sea, and although M is skeptical that there would be any kind of cloning facility here, those coordinates weren't in that data for nothing, and so we're here to investigate this place and see what we can find. MI6 sources suggest Nigel Block, the gentleman we encountered in the first level, is on a chopper inbound for the oil rig, and we have orders to chase him down and subdue him for questioning if possible. Also, Q, or rather R, gave us an upgraded jetpack for this mission, although it only has 1 burst per fuel charge, so we have to use it wisely. I really like the idea behind this level a lot, but there's parts of it that I feel could have been optimized a little bit better. I know I said earlier that this game doesn't accommodate stealth gameplay very well, but I really wanted it to, and this mission would have been so good for that. I wanted to play without being seen or having fired a shot, but you're kind of forced into going loud right at the start, since even if you pick these guys off without being spotted, there's a guy on that 3rd floor that is pointed right at your entry point and you can't take him out without being seen. If there is a way, I wasn't smart enough to figure it out, but it doesn't really matter since you getting spotted is a scripted little event that happens right after you walk into this door, and the rest of the level is complete chaos after this. I just feel like we missed something of an opportunity to let you sneak around an oil rig for like 10 minutes before the chaos starts.
You've come a very long way to die, Mr. Bond. But first, let me show you around.
What a classic supervillain laugh. I mean, he actually somehow managed to properly enunciate "Muhahaha" and does so repeatedly throughout the level. One of the main mechanics we'll be playing with is using our Q remote to interact with various crane controls across the rig, like dropping boxes on people and moving other boxes around and so forth. This specific one actually has no purpose though, since lowering or raising these boxes does nothing and you can just hop straight across them without doing anything to begin with. Weird that they would have even put this here. We also use our laser more in this game alone than all of the other Bond games we've looked at combined. Mostly just to burn off padlocks though, which does actually make sense because despite what other games and movies may have led you to believe, you can't actually just shoot padlocks off with a handgun in real life. You'd be way better off trying to pull some kind of McNally lockpicking trick to open one rather than trying to blow it off by shooting it, and the odds would be stacked more in your favor that way too. Shout out to Yee Life on YouTube for demonstrating this recently, by the way. There's tons of other videos that have been testing this idea for years, but he specifically did a really solid job of showing exactly what would happen. And no, you can't just shoot the shackle either. He tried that too, it just bounced off. Well, I mean, the Desert Eagle worked, and I guess a 9mm might work on like one of those really small, cheap $10 locks from Walmart. I don't know. I think it might be possible to blow open a lock if you hit it at the exact right spot, but again, it seems unlikely overall. Anyway.
I think I'll get the drop on him.
As we ascend to the top of the rig, we shoot down a helicopter, take out some guards, Q-Claw or Q-Jet up some platforms depending on what you like, and try to find out where Nigel Block has hidden himself away.
Nice form.
And we're on to our third and final rail shooter section, and it's the worst of the three in my opinion. It lacks the spectacle of the first two missions and is overall, if I'm being honest, kind of repetitive. I appreciate what they were going for here, but I kind of feel like this whole segment could have been cut outright with very little loss from the game. It only adds like 10 minutes to the overall playtime, and it's just not all that fun. Though the upsides are that there are still some cool looking areas here and there while we're cascading down this great tunnel. I think it could have maybe been more interesting if it stopped moving like one time and let us get off and do some shooting before resuming the ride, kind of like Half-Life, but even then I'm not sure if it would have made it better or worse. I don't hate it, and if the worst mission of your game is just mildly enjoyable compared to how fun the rest of your levels are, then you're probably doing pretty well. At the end of this tunnel, Bond encounters this massive device of sorts that... This game is so unserious. Anyway, Bond finds this massive machine of some kind that begins to activate as we ride around it in a circle, forcing Bond to kill one of those rocket soldiers, scoop up his weapon, and use the remote control rockets to take out these generators. Although I have to say I'm shocked that this is the only time we ever have to use these unless I missed one somewhere. We never use these remote rockets again either before or after. Anyway, that's the end of Nigel Block. Really, Bond? No quip? We gotta fix this. Everyone comment what exactly Bond should have said here as Nigel Block fell to his demise. This must be the cloning facility they've been calling Poseidon, so they were hiding it underneath an oil rig. Pretty clever. M has given us the green light to blow this place up by any means necessary. That means connecting our Q remote to the system and getting access to whatever programs we can to wreck the place's software and destroy all of the research they've been doing here, thereby permanently removing the potential of human cloning forever. Once the place is falling apart, we'll need to find a way out of here before we sink with it, but running that risk is part of the job after all. It's actually a really fun level too, with a very interesting and satisfying layout to explore. Clearly a lot of work went into making this mission play out interestingly and really dialing in that Bond villain secret hideout vibe. Like having this shark framed here as two soldiers emerge from the ground, and I didn't realize this when I was playing, but these are clearly clones. So that's actually mad cool, and the fact is that a ton of these older games generally reuse like the same 5 or 6 character models for the enemies you murder kill your way through, but this is one of the only games from this era I've played where the fact that they're all just clones of the same few dudes actually makes sense. No ludonarrative dissonance to speak of here. And I love how we actually see the cloning chamber with the bodies moving around like this. I mean, you cannot tell me this isn't awesome, dude. I am stoked just looking at this. It's so third act Bond movie in the best way. Anyway, we use our Q remote to interact with this cloning machine and destroy these bodies before they can grow into full-fledged abominations of nature. And now it's time to figure out a way to put this whole place down. There will be no James Bond Clone Wars arc on my watch. We eventually make our way to a submarine bay where it's kind of a reused asset of the one we saw in the first level, but it's got a ceiling and different coloring, and it also makes sense in the plot, so whatever, I think it works. With the base about to explode, that submarine is the perfect way out of here.
I seem to recall you being killed in Hong Kong, Miss Nightshade.
James, that was a clone. Created to gain information from you about what MI6 knows about Poseidon, and then to infiltrate the CIA. She was not meant to die. That rocket was intended for you.
Input navigation code. Enter verification code. Commencing dive sequence.
With Malprave's Poseidon base destroyed, Bond and Nightshade ride the sub on autopilot out to a Royal Navy carrier in the Mediterranean called the HMS Excalibur, which is a fine name for a ship if I do say so myself. This is huge though, because this ship was the hidden location of a summit meeting between the leaders of the world's major industrial nations, and now it's been completely taken over by Malprave's clones. This is where the crux of the game's major plot is revealed, and that's Malprave's plan to kidnap these world leaders and replace them with clones that do her every bidding. If she gets her replicants in these various seats of power across the world, well then, I mean, it's game over. World domination achieved, basically. Objective number 1 is to board the Excalibur and make our way to the ship's briefing room to establish contact with MI6. This is the penultimate level of the game, and it's pretty good, actually. I'm not crazy about the setting of this second-to-last mission being an aircraft carrier, personally. I felt like the mission before this one felt more of a climactic build-up to the big finale, and this one almost slows things down. I feel like I would have preferred this level to be set before we went to the oil rig, though, and that level order would have flowed better if we went from the tank level straight to this one, and then reverse ordered it to where we rode this ship to the oil rig, and then played straight through to the end and rode the submarine out. I don't know, I just don't love this for a penultimate level is all. It's a great mission, but that last one seemed more like a pre-finale level. Finding the set codes and using your Q remote to activate them is really satisfying, and there are a lot of different paths to take as you play your way through. Although once again, I hate to say that as much as this game wants to have stealth mechanics, it's just straight up more fun to shoot your way through everything. Although it does make the level much shorter, which is the case for all of these levels, admittedly. You could reasonably beat the whole game in like 4 hours, even if you were taking your time with it. And that is on the very short side for a video game. But across those 4 hours are some of the coolest Bond moments and missions you'll ever play in your life. So there's that.
Looks like toast. Safety first, lads.
With all of that knocked out, we fight our way to the ship's bridge where we find the captain chained up to the ceiling.
They've armed a warhead. I can disarm it if you cut this chain.
Under different circumstances, I'd think twice about this.
No fruit hangs too low for Bond. As she disables the bomb, we find Agent Nightshade has been captured and promptly free her with 2 quick shots before riding the zipline down to her location. Very, very slowly. Then we launch a missile at a sniper, man the machine gun turret, blow up a helicopter before Malprave's clones can get away, and then board the jet that Agent Nightshade has procured to head off to our final mission of the game, where the stakes are just a little bit high.
Malprave is holding the world leaders in a base high up in the Swiss Alps. 007, you must prevent world chaos and global economic meltdown by rescuing the leaders of the world.
Right, so no pressure then.
Zoe, Malprave's holding the world leaders somewhere in this base. Have the jet ready and be prepared to meet me up at the top.
I played this mission for the first time in my life back in early 2020, I want to say, right before COVID hit, when I had just gotten a PS2 and a few games, this one included, to start tracking through my backlog of games I'd been interested in but had never played before. And ever since that time, this is one of the first scenes that comes to mind whenever I think of this game. Firstly, because it looks completely incredible. I mean, I can't sing its praises enough here. The mountains, the visuals, the layout, the snipers. I have no idea why, but this is all just so cool to me. You're supposed to bust through here and get the sniper rifle from a crate, but if you've gotten a gold medal on one of the missions, I forget which one, it makes the aim on your golden gun pistol absolute, so wherever you're aiming is where you'll hit. And I used this fact to just pistol snipe the snipers from a distance before they ever clocked what was happening. In order to get through this section, we have to head up this left tower via an elevator, use your Q remote to get the code to the access hatch, then zipline over to the other tower, grab the armor and ammunition, and then take the last zipline back down to the office building. In case you hadn't put it together, this is the exterior of Malprave's headquarters in Switzerland, which we saw previously in the 5th mission of the game. Heading inside is where we'll find our final area of the game. All of the original world leaders are being held captive here while the clones are prepared to take their place, so we have to eliminate all of the opposition in this excellently crafted final Bond villain lair room that I love, where we'll find 4 of the 8 world leaders still alive and safe. The remaining 4 have been split up and are being held in each of the area's 4 missile silos, which means gaining access to each silo individually and then freeing them one by one. The first world leader we'll find in Silo 1 is the French Prime Minister. Then in Silo 2 is the German Chancellor. Silo 3 is the UK Prime Minister. And I'm sure you can guess that finally in Silo 4 is the President of these United States. With all of the world leaders saved and the situation here resolved, all that's left is for Bond to find Malprave and eliminate her to ensure this all stays buried.
Congratulations, Mr. Bond. You've scored a few victories, but it's not over yet. I've set the base's missiles to self-destruct. Soon your ashes will be falling like snowflakes. In the meantime, an old friend would like to entertain you. Nigel was most unhappy that you eliminated his double. He would like to return the favor.
Dude, Bond's facial expressions kill me. Look at how he reacts to her talking. Anyway, yeah, we have one final boss fight against Nigel Block here to end things off. I remember this fight being really hard for some reason, but I cleared it easily on my first try this time around, so I'm not sure what I was remembering. You can use your jetpack here a bunch if you're so inclined, but it's probably better if you just stay on the bottom floor and mag dump him as much as you can. Get a good look at this final boss because this is the last bit of gameplay right here. It's clearly not the best boss fight ever or anything, but I mean, it's functional, so there's that. After climbing up this light fixture, we chase Block through this tunnel straight to the end of the game. And with the game complete, we're given a video run-through of the game showing the player a variety of the different Bond moves scattered across the levels in case they may have missed some on their first playthrough and want to go back in and try again on a second playthrough. Anyway, that's James Bond 007 in Agent Under Fire. If you couldn't tell, I loved my time with this game, short as it was. I found myself looking forward to playing it again to make this video, and even in between sessions when I was getting footage, I found myself excited to get back into it. Which, as I've said before on this channel, one of the biggest compliments I can give a game is that it had me excited to get back into it in between sessions of playing it. Every level was loaded with interesting mechanics and extremely intentional and well thought out level design. That's not to mention how it all felt great to control and play. I mean, it's not the best shooter I've ever played, but at no point did I ever feel like I was fighting the controls, which so far in this Bond series has been a first outside of GoldenEye. The story is passable, but I'd say more than good enough for what this game wanted to be with consideration to the development cycle it had. All of the characters being copyright avoidant simulacrums of their film counterparts gives this game an incredibly unique feel that no other Bond game out there really has. It's like the never say never again of Bond games. It's got everything you'd expect to find in a Bond title, but in a slightly different executed way than anything else on offer. And I mean, really, it's not just a Bond game. It's Agent Under Fire, and there's nothing else really like it out there. The narrative, on the other hand, is nothing special, but it's passable. Adrian Malprave is a fun villain to act as the game's overarching bad gal, and Nigel Block is great as the more aggro henchman trying to foil Bond throughout. The more sideline characters are kind of forgettable, though, like Z or Zed, for instance, who appears in one cutscene for an introduction like she's going to matter, but she never does, nor does she ever appear again. The same is true of Malprave's twin assistants, Bella and Babe, who show up in one cutscene with a design more than unique enough to suggest they'd be a boss battle or something later, but that never happens. Also, it's not confirmed, but I'd bet that one of them is a clone. Or maybe their DNA as twins was being used for reference on how to replicate a human? I don't know, but that sounds like an awesome story direction that we just straight up didn't get. The style, charm, and design is all here in droves, but the game just didn't have the development time to really capitalize on how cool a lot of this stuff could have been. And speaking of clones, the plotline of cloning 8 world leaders to replace them and pursue world domination is so stupid that it somehow wraps back around to being fun and works. Which, I mean, does kind of tie itself back to how the studio wanted this game to lend itself more to Roger Moore's era of Bond films, which was campier and a bit more silly in its execution. I don't know why either. Normally I'd be criticizing this for being dumb, but the whole game just plays it all so straight and with such charm that I can't help but like it. But all of that is just regarding the single player component, and there's an entire multiplayer mode we haven't even talked about yet. So since the PS2 version of the game doesn't have bots in its multiplayer mode, I had to grab footage for it on the Xbox version, but the good news is that it's actually really fun. This game was actually marketed as going back to Bond's roots in several interviews, and GoldenEye was cited as a major inspiration for the direction that the studio wanted to take this game in. And with that said, it doesn't really actually play like GoldenEye, but you can see where the devs were referencing that game when they were putting this mode together, and it's got more to offer than I would have guessed. First off, there's actually a good number of maps here that are pretty fun to play. Most of them are extraordinarily small though, and very arena-like. I mean, they're super simple, but they are satisfying to move around in, and there's several different multiplayer modes here for us to test out. There is, of course, a kind of regular deathmatch mode where you just run around the map killing haphazardly whomever comes across your crosshairs, although there won't be a very large variety of characters doing so, since the one area where this game does seem to lack is in playable character models. I guess it's not really that big of a deal, but it is the truth that there's only like 8 characters, and half of them are just nameless NPCs or side characters from the game's single-player mode. Be honest, who here remembers getting hyped up about playing as Super Thug? Incredible. The thing that really impressed me about this mode, though, was how much you could customize the experience. There's speed settings, gravity settings, damage settings. It's actually kind of insane how varied you can make each different match. I know Halo 3 popularized this type of thing, but I had no idea it went this far back. You can turn gravity way down and speed way up so you're flying through the map and leaping from place to place, or you can do the opposite to where you're walking in concrete, which makes flying around on the grappling hooks even better. And in these maps, you can grapple onto pretty much anything. It's genuinely crazy how much you can customize your multiplayer experience here. I mean, one shot, one kill is already fun, but when your character moves like a cement truck, it's even more amusing. I know there were a few people out there who were having the actual best time of their life with this multiplayer mode back when it released, man. It's just a product of a time when games would slap a multiplayer mode together for friends to mess around in for a few hours when they got together, and it's got a lot of potential for a game whose multiplayer has since been outshined in every conversation about 007 multiplayer by other Bond games, notably GoldenEye or Nightfire. Of course, as you've already heard in the video so far, Agent Under Fire has some utterly brilliant music on offer across its playthrough. The score in question was handled by Don Vecca, whom you might recall my praising some elements of his contribution to this game's PS1 predecessor, The World Is Not Enough. Although I did also say that it fell short of what I felt were punchier and more impressive soundtracks from Tomorrow Never Dies for the PS1 and GoldenEye for the N64. Well, he came back swinging with this one, as it's got some of the most synth-heavy and stylish Bond music we've heard yet. This soundtrack is loaded with some seriously bouncy and impactful music across a myriad of different dynamic tracks that shift to accommodate whether or not the player is in combat. Each level has multiple tracks that are cycled depending on the state of the player at any given moment. When it's all quiet, the music is more ambient, with some elements of intensity to remind them to stay undercover, and when things go loud, the music goes loud with it, bringing in faster, more abrasive tracks to score the combat. Yeah, and of course there's a symphonic element here to carry each song melodically through the otherwise very percussion and synth-based tracks. It's in these more symphonic elements that you'll frequently hear the iconic Bond theme leitmotif threading its way in and out of certain songs. It's all just so good. I mean, what more can I say that the music couldn't say for itself with just a few seconds to shine? Absolutely brilliant. Now that we're nearing the end of things, I just want to say that if you've made any comment about how this title is clickbait because the game is by no means underrated, I'm telling you that you're wrong. This game is easily an 8 out of 10, arguably an 8.5, and yet looking at its Metacritic reviews, we see it clocking in at the lower end of the 70s, with the highest being the GameCube at a 74. The PS2 shows a 72, and the Xbox a staggeringly undeserved 71. Look, I've played a lot of bad games. I've played a lot of great games, and I've played a massive amount of dead center average games. This game is not average. It's not just above average, it's great. So yeah, to call it underrated feels accurate here.
Let's get on with it, shall we?
The enormous leap in technology alone between this game and any Bond game before it is staggering, but I'd also easily and readily call it one of the best shooters on the PS2 just overall. There's some pretty steep competition there, of course, but rare are the times when I play an older game like this and just have complete fun the entire time with little to no frustration or complaints to speak of. As a fan of video games, I really liked it, and as a Bond fan, I loved it. It's obviously a passion project made by a team of people who were both clearly excited to be working on such an iconic IP and also extremely committed to the product they were developing based upon it. It's fun, sincere, and self-aware all at the same time somehow, which normally seems impossible to do as most media tends to commit so harshly to one or the other to the point of overdoing it. The shooting isn't the best, but the level design and player controls are set up seemingly to accommodate for this. The game may be made on the Quake 3 engine, but it certainly doesn't expect you to play it like you would Quake 3. It takes into account the experience the player will have holding a controller, and as such is far more fun because of it. Not to mention how every level is bursting with different ways to complete most objectives, and a plethora of different Bond moves to find across every mission. 007 Agent Under Fire isn't just some video game with a few Bond assets thrown in there hoping the license alone will do the heavy lifting. It's a legitimate entry into the 007 catalog of media that has been built from the ground up with creating an experience that immerses the player in a truly Bond-like role in mind. At least that's what it became after everyone involved decided to abandon its original intention and go all in on an original story. So I guess the only real question to ask now is, how exactly could they top something like this? Hey everyone, thanks so much for hanging out and watching my retrospective on 007 Agent Under Fire. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, I'd ask that you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to keep following me on my journey through the 007 video game catalog. Those things seriously do help out a lot, and I appreciate it. Special thank you to all of my members and patrons, too, for all of your support, and if you didn't know, I've been going through and reviewing all of the 007 films for my members and patrons only, that you'll want to get in on if you've been enjoying my Bond retrospectives. I recently wrapped up my review on The World Is Not Enough, which is already available, along with Tomorrow Never Dies and GoldenEye. To release alongside this video, however, I decided to release my members/patrons only video retrospective on 007 Racing. Since it's a shorter video and it's not as in-depth as these bigger ones, I thought it would be more appropriate just to put it for members only, but don't worry, if you don't want to pay for it, it will become publicly available pretty soon in a compilation video, so just hang out and wait until then if you want to watch it. Otherwise, if you want to get in on it early, you can feel free to sign up as a member or a patron. And thanks again to all of you so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in the next video, but until then, that's all I've got for you.